evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Brian Rice, and I'm a proud member of the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta. I'm especially grateful that you are joining us tonight for what I hope to be one of many conversations, an important topic on the state of the Black community. When we were planning this event and topic, we had one important yet very significant goal in mind, which is to create a timely dialogue around actions we can take as men, as a chapter, as a community, to better serve the Gwinnett, Cobb, and North Fulton counties. This topic is very consistent with the mission of the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta: to improve the quality of life of our community and enhance educational and economic opportunities for the African American community. Tonight, we have a very, very distinguished panel that will be led by our own mentoring chair and chapter member, Mr. Ronald Skeet, who will moderate this evening's panel. However, before we introduce Ron and the panel, we'll have a few brief remarks from our chapter president, Mr. Wayne Ellison. Wayne, good evening and thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. As some of you may or may not know, we are the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta. We cover Cobb, Gwinnett, and Fulton County, but we are just one of 5 100 Black Men of America chapters here in Metro Atlanta. My vision tonight as chapter president is for us to have this much needed conversation so that we can become the men and women that God has created and called us to be. We hope that tonight's conversation is just the first of many conversations to come before. We no longer can kick the can down the road. It is time for us to have this conversation. So with that being said, Brian, let's get this conversation started.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne. Before we begin, I wanted to introduce our moderator for tonight's panel. Ronald Skeet is a seasoned and exceptional not-for-profit executive with over 15 years in the field. He holds a Master of Science degree in education, as well as a bachelor's degree in economics. He's held numerous leadership roles at the Boys and Girls Club of America, Children's Aid Society, and the Salvation Army. Currently, Ron serves as the Vice President of Business Development for 110, a national nonprofit working with corporations to create a skills-first culture that closes the opportunity gap between Black talent and those who did not have a 4-year degree. Ron is a member of the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta, where he volunteers and currently serves as our mentoring chair of our award-winning program, the Men of Tomorrow Mentoring, that serves young people in Gwinnett, Cobb, and North Fulton counties. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my friend and our chapter member, Mr. Ron Skeet. Take it away, Ron.
Brian, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here hosting this esteemed panel. I might add, you look fantastic this evening, sir, sharp as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic panel here for you tonight. Our goal is threefold, right? We're going to introduce these great leaders to you. We want you to discover a little bit more from their lens on this work as it relates to our community. And we also want to leave you with a strong call to action. We don't want this to just be a conversation. We want this to be an action starter, to ignite that fire in you. If you're connected already, we want to hear about it. If you want to get connected, we will get you connected. So first up on our great panel, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Emmett Schaefer, AKA Dr. E. He's held many executive level positions with Fulton County Schools, the United Way, and others. He's currently the founder of the Mental Health Concierge. I like that title. It specializes in cognitive-based therapy and solutions-focused therapy. Those I don't know anything about, so Dr. E would love to hear more about that. He's been a school counselor, assistant principal, and area superintendent, so he knows our schools and our young people and our families. With his doctorate, he leads some fantastic work. He's also a professional counselor and licensed professional counselor. He is also, some of you may realize you've heard him on the Frank Ski Show in the past as an advocate and somebody who's providing guidance to parents and families for their advice and guidance on daily challenges. He's also a pilot. So please put your virtual hands together for Dr. E.
Hello, Mr. Skeet. How's it going this evening?
It's going well, Dr. E. Please call me Ron.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure. I look
Amen.
forward to having some dialogue and being able to leverage some of my expertise in this all-important conversation this evening.
I love it. I love it. I love that pocket square too. I wasn't cool enough for the pocket square, but okay. All right. So up next, we have your favorite chief of police. Chief J.D. McClure has been in the role in Gwinnett County for the last 3+ years. Took over during the pandemic. Not the most attractive of times, but he's had a steadfast role in leadership. He served previously in many different roles, deputy chief, in the Operations Bureau. He was also appointed to Major in 2016, where he served as a Central Precinct Commander and the department's Chief of Staff. He also is a dedicated member of the Special Weapons and Tactics Team, I believe that's called SWAT, for more than a decade, so he knows his stuff. Chief McClure was promoted to lieutenant in 2009, and he served as the commander in Criminal Investigations Division and the commander of the Office of Professional Standards, so he can set the tone for excellence. He's obtained his associates in criminal justice, a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He believes in a strong community and police-based partnership. And one of the phrases I love that he said is, "You cannot arrest your way to success." So he's going to tell us a little bit about the work later. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Chief McClure.
So good evening, Ron, and members of 100 Black Men North Metro Atlanta chapter. Really happy to be here. Looking forward to this discussion. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks now. So again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. And I believe tonight there's a little bit of March Madness finishing up. So in that tone, okay, starting at small forward, probably power forward, right? We have James Rayford. He's representing from your very own Gwinnett County Public Schools, the largest school district in Georgia. Mr. Rayford is the director of community-based mentoring. So we engage a lot between our work with the 100 and the great work he leads. This school system ranks 11th largest in the nation. So he has a large job in supporting families and young people directly in their times of need and beyond. He's just a great person to know. The program that he leads pairs caring adults with students starting as early as the 4th grade and up until their senior year in high school. The program believes in the power of one, and we believe in that as well. So if we get one person here connected in a different way to support our community, we believe we have a victory. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Rayford.
Good evening. Thank you, Ron, for the introduction. Actually, I played shooting guard, but I think I'm big enough to play small forward now. We'll see if we can do that. But again, welcome everyone. I want to thank the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta for having me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic, James. Thank you so much. And thank you for your long-standing partnership with us over the years as we do this work in Gwinnett County and others. So with that, I want to set the stage. But before I do that, I want you to know a little bit more about these great leaders besides just their title, if you will, right? So we're going to do a little bit of a fun thing called the lightning round. So in this round, I'm just going to start off and call your name. But what we want you to do is let us know your hometown, your favorite food, and what you do for fun. So James, we ended off with you. We're going to go back with you.
Okay. I'm from a small town in northern Mississippi called Holly Springs. It's about 30 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee, home of Russ College Bearcats, which is an HBCU, the oldest HBCU in the state of Mississippi. One of my favorite foods, I'm going to say probably not good for me, but potato chips is one of my favorite foods, and hamburgers. And then thirdly, you asked in terms of what I do for fun. I got bit by this bug that's called GOLF. So that's what I do for fun now is I enjoy my family and playing golf.
Oh, there you go. I see. We got a golf challenge coming up. Hopefully we'll see you out there in May. Okay, fantastic. Chief, what about you, sir?
Well, I am a Georgia boy, as they say. I spent, obviously, I was born in Decatur, Georgia, and raised in Bartow County, which is up north near Lake Altoona. And outside of the time that I was stationed out in California in the Marine Corps, Georgia, of course, has always been my home. As far as spare time, I love physical fitness, anything involving, hiking or, working out, that type thing. Favorite food, I like a nice fillet from time to time, even though we got to watch the red meat consumption. I enjoy one from time to time, but that's kind of me.
All right, that sounds good. And last but definitely not least, Dr. E.
Hello, yeah, we are bringing you tides and vision from the West Coast. I'm actually from San Diego, and not home, but somewhat home of the LA Chargers, who will be in the Super Bowl this year with our coach Harbaugh. So remember, I said that, bet on the Chargers. So help from the West Coast. And my favorite foods, I really like the seafood. I like oyster Rockefellers. I like shrimp, pasta, and salmon. So I'm kind of a seafood guy. And what I do for fun, a couple things. I like to play tennis, and then also I fly airplanes. So those are my hobbies and how I get away and manage that mental health.
I did hear about that airplane thing. I thought it was just kind of a play on words because you were asking families to be pilots and develop a flight plan. You really fly.
That is correct, sir. Come on, come with me. Come with me, Ron.
Sounds good. I think we will jump on there and do that. So I want to set the stage, gentlemen, for us here tonight. And we looked at some of the stats. According to the Pew Research Center's January 2024 facts about the U.S. population, Blacks in the United States represent about 14.4% of the entire population, with a high concentration in the South where we live. About 60% of Blacks live in the South, and the population in Georgia is about a third. Gwinnett also mirrors that, where we have a lot of our leaders. So when we look at this as 100 Black men of North Metro Atlanta, one of the things we want to do as leaders in the community is leverage that opportunity. Being a third of the population here in Georgia, we have a great opportunity to contribute to the broader community and the success of our community. We want a community that thrives. So that's why we're having this conversation, to see how we can take responsibility and increase opportunities for success in the Black community, which will raise up the entire community in this great place. And I am a leadership buff, so I like to say leadership matters.
I got it up on the
And leadership also not only has action that takes place, but it also inspires others to be better. I think we're having some background noise there, gentlemen.
Hey, shit.
I think
They got, right.
Mute.
They got a nice background though.
Okay.
The background is nice. Dre, truthfully, they should have.
Hey.
I was about to say they should have ran it on Cisco.
Yep.
Well, we got it. All right,
perfect. So each of you are influential leaders in your own right? In many different areas of the community that we live in. And Chief McClure, you also a historic leader as a person of color at the highest level in such a large opportunity in terms of the Gwinnett County Police Department. As 100 Black men, we have a commitment to the communities and the communities in which we live. So we want to have a discussion about these challenges and also solutions, and end off with actions that can inspire us individually and collectively to change our communities for the better, for everyone. So with that, we're going to start off with education. So, Brother James, as a leader in Georgia's largest school district, largest population of youth, that means there's a larger opportunity for impact here, right here in Gwinnett. So what would you say fathers and father figures need to know about our young people post-pandemic?
Well, that's a great question, Ronald. As as Gwinnett County goes, so does the state of Georgia. As you mentioned, the largest school system. 1 in 10 children in the state of Georgia are actually educated here in Gwinnett County public schools. And I would simply say this: is post-pandemic, just seeing the things that are going on in our schools and talking with our young people. We have to get back to some basics, and when I say basics, I mean just simple communication. We have to get back to the basics of communicating consistently. We also need to look at, in terms of accountability, we also need to look at boundaries. When you talk about high school graduation rate, some of the things that I'll share this with you about Gwinnett County Public Schools in terms of our graduation rate. We know there's about 82%, but what we don't know, many people may not know, is that in the class of 2023, our Black students had the highest graduation rate, higher than the state's average.
Oh, wow.
And we're a little over 80%, 88% for our females, 81% for our African-American males. But many people don't know that. But I would also just stress, I have a lot of little details that I'll go into, but when we talk about what can community, parents, people do to get involved, is to simply have those conversations with our young people, helping them to figure out, when we talk about navigate this thing called life, helping them to set goals. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And, when they say when you place those SMART goals or place those things in mind, just having simple conversations. For instance, I'll give you an example. Most people don't realize 9th grade has the highest dropout rate of any grade level of high school in the country, right? So one thing we can do as proactively and as parents and as community people is know what the high school graduation requirements are in the 8th grade and middle school. So being able to know those requirements so that you can start planning for those short-term successes, so you can see how and what it's going to take for our students to graduate. We know every student is not going to go to college, but we in Gwinnett County Public Schools, we have over 63 career pathways that our students have options for. So you have to get in. Gwinnett being a large system, there's a lot of information out there. Our school system just redesigned its website so it's more user-friendly. You can simply type in a lot of things and those things will come up: promotion requirements, the school handbook. So it's those little things that community people can do to make sure that our students know, because when we talk about sports and we talk about, you can't play a sport if you don't know the rules, right? So the same thing when it comes to education. If you got to know the requirements, then you can know how to navigate this thing using the resources that Gwinnett County Public Schools has available for that. So those are just a little things that people can do, but I know we'll come back to that. But that's one of the things in terms of what's going on in Gwinnett County. We're focusing on our strategic plan, which is our blueprint for the future, where we're focusing on those 4 E's when we talk about empathy, equity, effectiveness, and excellence. So when we talk about the mental health piece, we know that empathy is something we've hit from day one in our strategic plan. So we want all of our students to feel that sense of belonging. So I would encourage community people and parents to ensure that your child is a part of something, whether it be a sports club, an extracurricular activity, make sure they're involved. So I'll stop there, but I could go on, but we'll have some more conversation, because I do wish to share with you some specifics that parents can do as well.
Fantastic, James. Thanks so much for that. What I heard from you is a couple of things. Back to basics, right? Let's communicate with our young people, right? I also heard, technology is good, but it's not everything. So let's make sure that our young people are connected, whether it's sports, extracurricular activities. Those things can help keep them safe and engaged, whether it's in school or not. So on that, I'd like to actually transition. Let's talk a little bit more about safety. So Chief McClure, as we mentioned, you lead the 2nd largest police department in the state of Georgia. We know you're doing a lot of exciting things. You're hiring new staff. I think I just saw the Rising Stars Community Awards recognizing youth just closed out. So we'd love to hear about that, as well as some things that the average father or father figure can do to help improve the safety of our community.
Right. So good question, Ron. When I talk to the community, I like to pass on information that I think is tangible, that's simple without oversimplifying things, right? So my ask for our community, Black men, Black women, and also enlightening our young people on this idea is to minimize risk factors. And I talk about this a lot, Ron, and you probably heard me talk about this before. Generally speaking, when we talk specifically about Gwinnett County, we have a safe community. The trouble is that when folks start to get involved in those risk factors, then their community obviously becomes less safe. There's almost a guaranteed negative outcome when you continue to act in this space. So when I talk about those risk factors, I want everybody to know that domestic violence is a risk factor. Gangs, and that means whether you are actively in a gang or you have a youth in a gang, guess what? Their family members are also in danger. Usually, if we see a drive-by shooting of an intended gang member, they're not checking to see who's home, right? They don't know that grandmother's there or there's a younger sibling. So drugs, gangs, youth and guns, that's another one, right? Over 80% of the very, very serious offenses that we have involving juveniles will have a handgun or a firearm of some sort present. But beyond just the violence that can be caused between juveniles, one of the things I promise you we're going to see every year is a number of youth who are going to be killed, seriously injured due to negligent discharge of firearms. So we really, really need to be careful in that space. The other thing I would tell you is risky behavior. And I like to refer to this as people in spaces or in places that they're unfamiliar with people that they're unfamiliar with for activities that even their closest loved ones don't know they're involved in. And then that ends up being the risk factors that I would highlight. So number one, we need to obviously as adults limit our involvement in those, and then make sure that we're bringing our young people up to understand that, as the old folks used to say, nothing good is going to come with constantly being involved in that environment. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I would point out is that I really, during my tenure as chief of police, want to normalize positive relationships with police. I give the commanders in each of these precincts, every commander in this department knows that they have two essential orders from me directly. The first is to reduce crime in your area of operation, right? We're going to do that ethically. We're going to do that in accordance to Georgia law and the Constitution of the United States. But secondly, it is to build positive relationships in our community. We're going to judge each one of those individuals on a yearly basis on their ability to do those two things. So again, let's talk about the risk factors. Let's normalize positive relationships with police. And I want to be very clear. I can't control what's happening throughout the United States. In some areas, I don't know how soon that will be possible. But I can tell you in Gwinnett County, it's foremost in our minds and what we try to do. And then the last thing I kind of want to talk about, and this is almost on a personal level, is we really need to be careful about what our young people are listening to, right? I grew up a hip hop enthusiast. You might know that I'm riding down 316 listening to Elevators from Outkast.
Elevators is on your playlist?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But the challenge is when you listen to a lot of today's music, and I know that when I was a young kid, hearing Tupac and C. Dolores Tucker and a lot of the vitriol that she caught, this music is very, very powerful. And if we're constantly injecting this idea of shooting people, there not being any consequences, robbing people, doing things like that, how can we not expect that at some point, constantly hearing those images doesn't become someone's reality? So I'll segue there. Those are kind of the three hot topics that I wanted to touch on. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Chief. And did not know you were an Outkast fan, so I will make a note of that. I'm originally from New York, home of hip hop, by the way. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit differently. But, you know, when we talk to our mentees and our Men of Tomorrow program across all the counties that we serve, one of the things we talk to them about is a media diet. So just like when you
Yes,
think of, you know, the FDA gives us that healthy diet and what it should look like, right? Different colors, different foods,
that's right.
your starches, your vegetables, etc. We talk to them about that as well in terms of your media diet. There's nothing wrong with Tupac. There's nothing wrong with country music. You want to divide it up so you have a variety of what has influenced you, whether it's music, whether it's social media,
That's
whether
right.
it's what you're engaged with, even with the relationships that you had. Because one of the things, if I heard you correctly, Chief, you talked about positive relationships, right? Improving those with our
That's right.
law enforcement officers. So we see law enforcement officers, not only in cases of emergency, but also in cases of well-being, but also for our young people to think about who they are in relationship with. So that is some awesome pieces, and I'm looking forward to hearing more in our second round. So
Thank you.
we now want to anchor this in a couple of things, right? As we say, life be lifing, right? We had a panelist, Brother Isaac Ingram, who is the example that we were going to highlight tonight in terms of really being able to take action in the community. He was inspired and actually started up a Christian mentoring program with the juvenile justice centers and learned a lot and created and was inspired to make an awesome short film that we'll actually be showing not tonight, but sometime in the fall. But unfortunately, he had a deaf in the family. His mother-in-law passed away, very close to him, and he was honest enough to come on early and say, you know what, this is really tough for me and my family, and I need to take care of myself. So that was powerful. So that leads us to mental health, and how do we as males in the community take care of ourselves? Do we think about self-care? So when we look at the Department of Health and Human Services, when they specifically look at minority health, Black adults in the United States are more than likely than others to report persistent symptoms of emotional distress. Things like sadness, feeling like everything is an effort. Black adults living below the poverty line are more than twice as likely to report serious psychological distress than those who are more financially secure. So economics and employment is important here as well. So hopefully everybody's wheels are turning to see how we can be part of the solution. Despite these needs, we find that only 1 in 3 Black adults with mental illness receive treatment. According to American Psychiatric Association's mental health facts, they are also, when you look at the Black community, less likely to receive guideline consistent care, less frequently involved in research. So there's less information that's known about how to best serve this population, and more than likely to use emergency rooms as primary care. So with that, we have none other than our favorite expert, Dr. Emmett Schaefer, better known as Dr. E. And Dr. E, we would ask you, can you tell us more about the significance as it relates to mental health of fathers and father figures in the lives of children?
Yes, and thank you, Ron, and for that question. And I really want to go in 2 directions. One, I want to go personal, right? And so how I want to really establish this whole idea of mental health is really looking at it through a personal lens first, right? So a personal lens for me would be, I was blessed to grow up with a mother and father in the home. They stayed married, and they were married for 45 years before my father passed away of pancreatic cancer. But I would tell you that my father was my father. He allowed me to do certain things, right? He allowed me to explore, but he created guardrails. He created guardrails by expectations. He created those guardrails with what I call and what he called his trilogy. His trilogy was God, family, and education. And if you didn't want to talk about those 3 things, he really didn't want to have a conversation with you. Right? So there was an expectation already set for myself and my 4 brothers, and my, thank God and rest my mother's soul. I don't know how she did it. She raised 4 boys and successfully. And so I would say I'd start with my father. was my father, then became my friend as I got older and started to have my family. And then as we even got older, he then became my mentor. So those things I think that are really concrete, and those things have really set and established who I am today. I would not be sitting here in front of you today if it were not for my father, and anchored and balanced with the partnership that my mother and father had in raising us 4 boys. So I wanted to also talk about a little bit about some of the statistics when we start talking about fathers, right?
Please.
We've heard a couple of different things, right? The good news about social sciences, the social sciences is now has a different view on fathers. So they're looking at research from a standpoint of the positive aspects of fathers versus a fatherless household, right? And so when you start with a positive conversation, you're then able to have a positive results. So for instance, the Journal of Psychological Services and the Institution for Research on Poverty shows that there are 72 million fathers in this country. They're biological dads, they're social dads, they're legal dads, they're stepfathers. And so those are collectively the type of fathers that show up for families. So fathers are not just a second adult in the home. So we looked at fathers back in, I guess, the Leave It to Beaver days when mom would stay home and dad would go out and work, and right, and he would come home as a second person. That no longer exists. But one of the interesting things that the research showed as well was that fathers tend to play with their child more dangerously. And let me help you with the context when I say that. More dangerously, meaning that they're rougher with their children. But what the studies have showed through that, then those children are more likely to encourage risk-taking, right? Risk-taking from a standpoint of saying, hey, I can go out and do this, right? I can go out and start my business. And then the other thing that I think is also important is it also creates competitiveness, right? That whole idea of being competitive and what that means around being a team player. And so, other studies, and a wonderful study, and I'll just give you some of the statistics here from the Review of General Psychology. And so I really want you to hear these statistics, right? Having a father contributes to positive well-being in children. It contributes to a child's happiness. It contributes to social and academic success. So when we look at going to Gwinnett County schools, we know that those kinds of things, if we see fathers in the household, then James in Gwinnett County is going to have probably better opportunities for those kids to excel. More positive moral behavior. When we look at moral behavior, of course, we're looking at Chief McClure, right? That moral behavior and what particularly men are saying to women and how they're treating women, right? So that's critical. Twice as likely to enter college, 75% less incidence of teen pregnancy, 50% less depression. 50% less depression, 80% less to be incarcerated. If that is not a direct connection, I don't know what is, right? And then finally, gentlemen, it is so important, this study found, to spend regular alone time with your children. And in doing so, you begin to raise kids that are more compassionate. So I will say this with a caveat. I'm going to say this with a caveat. I have 3 daughters, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, one in Tennessee, and I have my wife. And all 4 of them are listening. So this comes with a caveat, right? That caveat is that without the connection of mom and dad and bringing the best of what they have, this doesn't happen, right? This doesn't happen in isolation. It happens because there's a partnership. Now, whether or not you're a single mom or single dad, that partnership has to exist in order for those things that I listed to happen. So I say social sciences is getting it correct and looking at those positive aspects versus the doom and gloom of homeless or fathers that are not in the homes. So I look forward to having more dialogue around that and other issues that involve parents.
Wow, that is amazing, Dr. E. So the first thing you said that amazed me is you said leave it to Beaver. So we gotta move that audience up, right? We gotta find new fathers here, something. But we're dating ourselves. But the whole issue when fathers are not present, that really just blew my mind. I've heard some of it. But I have not heard that there's a 80% reduction in incarceration, a 50% reduction in less depression. And for me, and what we talk about in 100 Black Men is you can be a father or father figure, right? Those are mentors, coaches, right? If you're on the sidelines and you're in the audience right now, you're saying, hey, I don't have any children right now. You're still welcome, right? So in the Gwinnett County schools and most of the school system, there is a mentoring program. There's an opportunity for you to coach, but it becomes what Chief McClure was talking about in terms of those protective factors. So
Right.
we need you to step up. We need you to stand up if you're not connected yet. If you are connected, fantastic. If you're not connected, we will have a link at the end and we will get you connected. So real quick, before we move on, Dr. E,
Yes, sir.
how can men, strong, manly men like I am, right? I don't cry and all that good stuff. I'm just kidding. But how can we be better role models for improving mental health and removing this stigma that if you're taking care of yourself, if you cry, if you show your sensitive side, that there's a negative stigma attached to that? What's your thoughts on that?
And that's a great question. And later in the discussion, maybe I will be able to talk more about what the makeup of my practice looks like and why. And so, I would say initially, I would say, don't be silent, right? Too many of us, and I deal with enough diversity of men to say that this is not just one issue that is unique to a certain race, right? It is unique to men.
Yep.
When it comes to this whole idea of masculinity, signs of weakness by going to ask somebody for something, because that's all couched in what? This is the way that I was raised, right?
Yeah.
To be a man, right? We even still hear that, man up, right?
Yep.
We still hear those kinds of things. And this whole thing, and I know that this word has started to be used out there, this word called vulnerability, right? Vulnerability. One of the things, Brene Brown, someone that I follow pretty closely, she talked about this whole idea of courage through vulnerability, right? It takes courage to be vulnerable. It's not weak to be vulnerable, right? Vulnerability says that I have all that it takes to know that I can be vulnerable and not know what the result is going to be when somebody receives what I'm trying to give. That's vulnerability, right? And then also I'd say share stories, right? Share stories with people that you can trust, those things that you're feeling. Encourage others to be involved in mental health and seek help. Seek opportunities to listen and to contribute to panels like this, right? This is a great forum in order to get information. And I could actually, as a man, sit here and I could be listening to this and you never have to see my face. And I'm clocking it, I'm hearing it, and then I'm now the genius, right? Because I'm listening. Right, and I can do that. I can in anonymity, right? And so
I like that.
Right, so you can do those things, right? And then for the professionals, when I look at Gwinnett County, when I look at the chief, do you have magazines? Do you have content? Do you have literature that's laid out in your office that gives people exposure to mental health and mental health ideas and conversations about mental health? Right? There's all kinds of mental health magazines out there that are perfect for school systems and for police departments. And then also this whole idea of develop a group for men that allow them to speak openly without being ridiculed or labeled as weak, right? I was looking at something. I remember years ago there was something. It might not have been too many years ago, but it was a slogan called "You Go, Bro." I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah,
right?
I do.
Right? Yeah, the "You Go, Bro." Right? And what that did is it really was helping you to understand. Hey, let me go and talk to somebody. Let me go and talk to somebody, another man that looks like me, and that's okay. So really encouraging those kinds of groups. And I'll say this last thing, one of the things that I do is I go to the people, right? So once a week, I have what I call shop talk, where I go get my hair cut, right? And I have brothers that come in and I run groups with brothers and we talk about a lot of things. And so there's all kinds of places, and I'm going to get to the golf as an action plan here in just a second. So I'm gonna preface that by saying, you know, we could do something with golf as well. But those are the things I think that we can do to remove some of the stigmas.
I love it. Listen, you are reading our mind, because when this is the beginning of a series. So when we have our next State of the Black Community, we're going to a barbershop, Dr. E. So thank you so much for that.
Sure.
I'm going to bring it back to our schools and education. So Brother James, we hear a lot about screen time. We know that the pandemic, even though it's been officially ruled as over, we know you're still seeing the impact in your schools. We're still seeing it with our young people. Tell us a little bit about how fathers and father figures and coaches can help our young people and students have a healthier balance between that screen time and real life time.
That's a great question. You know, as the research shows that students spend more time on their technology and screen time than they do in the actual classrooms.
Yep.
So one of the things I would tell fathers and men that would actually do is to start slow. You know, have some time where you come home and say, we're going to take 15 minutes a day and there's going to be no cell phone time. We're going to have some conversations. They can do that. Parents and also fathers can also come to the schools to become a mentor or be able to volunteer in their child's school. And here's something I think would be very powerful as men when we're talking about raising our children or being a father is being able to visit your child's schools during parent-teacher conferences, during those times when it's needed, but to be able to tell your child to say, whether we know it's, again, typically sometimes men are considered the breadwinner, so if they can't necessarily have flex time at work, but be able to say, I'm going to accumulate my vacation. I'm going to take a vacation day. I'm going to take part of my vacation time. I'm coming to your school to see you. Imagine what that would do for that child to know. That tells that child that education is important because my dad or my father took a personal time off to come to the school. So that sets the stage that education is important. So it's those little things. I think sometimes we as parents, you don't have to go from 0 to 100, but you can just start little by little, just saying, we have a 5-minute conversation without the phone. You know, do that for a week. The next week, you increase it to 10. The next thing you know, little by little, that child is saying, you know, they realize they will come to the point where, you know, if you do some things for 21 consecutive days, they say it can become a habit. They'll start looking for those conversations. Kids want structure. Kids want boundaries. Kids want accountability. We have to make sure that we are there for them. And I end on this note here. I heard a phrase once said, well, we hear this all the time, meet the young people where they are. Well, guess what? Not only should we meet them where they are, but we have to be willing to walk with them. And that takes time, Frank. So those are some things in which we men can do and fathers can do to help their child's education. And again, set those small goals, let them know their expectations. You know, let them know that, hey, here's your plan for, let's come up with a plan for getting out of middle school. Here's the plan for entering high school. Let's find those things out. And we have a lot of resources in Gwinnett County that students can use to find out what is it that they want to do. When we have all these assessment tools, I would encourage parents to know what those, fathers can know what those assessment tools are, and then you can start bridging that gap. And I'll give an example of this. One of the things that we have in our school system is called the use of Naviance, which is a career inventory assessment that kids can take from starts in kindergarten, first grade, all the way through 12th grade. But there are 3 modules in particular where it actually allows them to take an assessment. So imagine when our students are being given those assessments, and then they can have those conversations with the mentor. So if you, or they have those conversations with their parents. We have to use these type of platforms to share their networks. So when you find a student that says, hey, I want to go into electrical engineering, or I want to be this entrepreneur, then you never know who's in that network. Once they can make that connection, then students would then start to see, okay, school is important because I want to get from point A to point B, because this is what I want to aspire to be, but I have to get my education to get there. So I think those are some real easy things that fathers and men can do to make an impact on our students. And then lastly, I'll end with this, is when we talk about pandemic, I'm glad you mentioned that. We as adults, everyone that was on this call here, we didn't experience a pandemic when we were growing up as children. So we have to let our students know that, use that as resilience, and resilience comes from experience. So now we can start telling students, you may be a grade level behind, or we know a lot of things happen, but guess what? You're still here. You survived the pandemic. So that means let's instill that, to use that as a positive, say by you instill and by you surviving a pandemic as a teenager, you can survive anything as an adult.
I like that, James. Thank you. You took us to church there, good brother. So I heard, you know, for the social media, you can start small, and that's music to our ears, right? I got a son and I work with him on the social media too, but 15 minutes a day, and then you can increase week to week, and then also visiting the schools as well. So those are 2 great things that we can do right now to get started. But we got a question that I'm going to use to close us out. So thank you, whoever submitted this question. I can't see your name here in the chat, but we're going to ask each of you, as we get ready to summarize, what are 3 things that we can do to help the community be successful from your lens? So Chief McClure, from the lens of public safety, and I don't think it has to be 3. If you got 1, 2 solid things, let us know what we can do to help make our community safe.
Yeah, so it's going to sound redundant, but I think it's important to focus on the things that I talked to you about earlier. Again, which is you have to recognize that in Gwinnett you are living in a safe community, but we can make it safer by not involving ourselves in these risk factors. And while I get that's easier said than done, it's a conversation that if we continue to have and we continue to focus on, is something that we can accomplish. And then again, I go back to normalizing these relationships with police.
Yep.
We want our residents in Gwinnett to come out and engage with the police department. There are a lot of different events that we have. One I'll call your attention to on May 16th. I believe that's a Saturday. We are having our multicultural festival. And if you've never had an opportunity to experience that, it's the best in what Gwinnett has in terms of seeing the level of diversity that we have here. It's also an opportunity to interact directly with the police department, to see nearly every single unit within the police department. One of the things we have to remember is that this isn't my police department. This is the community's department.
Love it.
I always go back to Sir Robert Peel, who's really considered the father of modern day policing, who in 1829 came up with 9 basic principles of policing, many that are still relevant today. But one of the key things he said was, we can never forget the idea that the public are the police and the police are the public. How we've gotten in the country to have this divide is something that we really have to kind of take away. So those are my kind of takeaways. And for everyone who's listening here, I just want to tell you personally, I appreciate your support. One of the things that kind of got lost in the shuffle in the aftermath of George Floyd's tragic murder was that the media is pushing this idea that support from police only comes from one demographic. Well, what we know is in Gwinnett, we have the support of our entire community. we don't pass SPLOST projects, which is special purpose local option sales tax, to complete police projects such as a new police headquarters without support from every, generally most of our citizens here across all socioeconomic statuses,
Okay.
across all race. So I really want to thank everyone for your support, and I look forward to engaging more. I wish we'd go for another hour.
Thanks, Chief. Well, we're definitely going to bring you back. So what I heard is the police are the public and the public are the police. So we are you. So make sure you say hello to the officer when you see him, because that's also setting the example with our young people that if you say hello to the local officer, that they recognize there's a positive relationship and reducing those risk factors. Thank you so much. Dr. E, in the space of mental health, what are a couple of things, 2 to 3 things that we as men in the community can do to improve it for the community?
Yes, sir. And since I was invited, I figured I'd be an overachiever and give you 4.
Right on, right on. Michael Hudson asked that question, so he's going to be happy. You're giving him a bonus.
So the first thing I would say is, when people ask you when you ask someone, how are you doing? Take time to stop and listen, right? It seems simple, but it's really not. You know, people will ask you how you're going, how you doing. You'll start to talk and they're halfway down the road, right? And
That's right.
I thought you asked me a question.
That's right.
And then the second part of that, or the other side of that coin, is when someone asks you how you're doing, you know, take the time to be honest with how you're feeling and what you're doing. And then I may get on a few, 100 Black men's toes here when I'm gonna give you an idea. But here's the idea. I know you have a golf tournament coming up, right? You sometimes have on a par 3, you have a hole in one, right? Sometimes you have a card, sometimes you have that. How about putting, I don't know, maybe the mental health concierge out there with a sign saying that you get a hole in one, you get 3 to 4 free therapy sessions.
Okay.
Right. So it keeps it, present of mind. And then the last thing I would say, and this is what I do with my clients, beware of negative energy. Right. I always ask this question when there's something happening. I say, so what is the alternative reality that allows for understanding and reconciliation? Right. Your reality isn't always the only reality, right? But if we get used to start looking at alternative realities, other points of view, appreciate other people's worldview, I think there's a lot of things that we can do in that space that allows for us to really get along and live in peace. So I would leave you with that.
I love it. So how you doing? Let's be honest about how we're doing with each other, right? Let's reach out and share. If it's a great day, great. But if it's not so great, let's take the time to really think about it and check in on ourselves. I saw somebody, Brian Rice and some others. I don't know if Tim Hart, he heads up our golf challenge, but you may be getting a call right after this. But I think the point you made, Dr. E, was just make mental health, thinking about it, conversation, self-care, more a part of our day and how we manage ourselves. And then beware of the negative energy, right? And that there are different realities. As my wife would tell me, Ron, it's not always about you, brother. So I think that will help us as well. So closing out, James Rayford, if you can give us in the next 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 things that we as males, fathers, and father figures can do to support our young people in schools.
Okay, great. Again, thanks for this great dialogue. One, I would say, become a mentor. That's one thing men fathers can do. The second thing is volunteer at the local school. Attend a event other than a sporting event. Go to the school's website and look at their calendar of events and find out how can they make a difference. Join the PTSA. Attend an orchestra meeting, but attend a non-sporting event that you can learn more about the education of your child or getting involved. Those things will make a huge difference in a child's life.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So mentor, volunteer, go beyond sports, join the Parent Teacher Student Association. And I'll throw a little something on there too, if you don't mind. It's like, sometimes we come and we volunteer, we show up for the PTA, etc. And it's like we're waiting. You know, if you heard your pastor say it sometimes, you come here waiting to get fed. We got to come there willing to give, right? Because sometimes like,
Correct.
well, you didn't start on time, this, that, and the other thing. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, James, if we come in with a mindset of I'm part of the solution, so regardless of what I see when I get to the school, I need to help fix it and be a part of that solution, that would help. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, it does.
All right, dear Chief. I saw you you're offering some economic improvements. So talk to us, Chief.
Yes, just real quick. I always take an opportunity to encourage those that I speak to encourage your loved ones to consider a career in law enforcement, and more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, a career with Gwinnett County Police. The training here is second to none. We pride ourselves on our accreditation standards. There's just a lot to like here. So certainly we need police officers, but even if those folks are not necessarily interested in a career in working patrol and things of that nature, we have 911 opportunities, plenty of jobs within the police department. And we need to be a reflection of our community. So we need more folks in our community to come join. So please, if you know you have loved ones, friends, families, please send them our way. We would love to have them. Thank you.
That is great. I have a few family members who are retired officers, so it's not a bad career too. You can kind of retire pretty early too. So
right.
with that, we want to thank you, Dr. Emmett Schaefer, James Rayford, Chief McClure, for your time this evening. Thank every one of you for showing up. And I'm going to pass it back to our esteemed president, the Wayne Ellison, to close us out.
All right. Thank you, Ron Skeet, for doing a phenomenal job in moderating tonight. Folks, let's give it up, man, for our panelists tonight who have taken the time out to share with us tonight a wealth of information. Chief McClure, outstanding as always. We certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Dr. Schaefer, we certainly thank you for your words of wisdom. James, we thank you for your words of wisdom. So certainly want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight for what will certainly be the first of many conversations to come in the future.